How's it going, everybody? We are back with another episode of the Escalate podcast. This is episode 30, the big 3-0. It's a big deal for me getting to 30. And so if this is your first episode, I appreciate you being here. If you've been listening to this since the very beginning, since episode 1 of the archived episodes, I appreciate you being here. This shows a little bit of consistency from my side. It's been a goal of mine to get these out to you guys as frequent as possible over the course of 2025. So getting to 30 is pretty cool. In this episode, I get to talk to one of my very close friends, Blake Barrett. Blake is a huge inspiration to me. He should be a huge inspiration to a lot of different lifters. He was able to basically come from what we'll discuss in this episode, a very bad lifter, to stepping on the world stage and being the strongest 74 at one point in Canadian Powerlifting Union or CPU history. In this episode, we will dive into some of the adversity that he's faced through injuries and what it means to be and have longevity in the sport, as well as how he's been able to stay consistent in training while still being in law school and studying for the bar. Now, before we do dive into that conversation, I do want to give a shout out to 110%, the 110% team, and Kevin Papa being the head honcho. He's just done amazing things in the community. If you're in the powerlifting community, you already know who this guy is. If you don't know who he is, go ahead and follow him on Instagram. He's a great dude, puts on some of the best meets. We have something very special planned, actually, by the end of this year that I'll be hopefully announcing very soon. With that being said, if you have not tried any products from 110%, I highly suggest it. Their pre-workouts taste amazing. They work very well. Their sleep supplement, by far my favorite product, is fantastic. If you do want to check any of that stuff out, buy anything, including apparel, you can use code ROB at checkout for 10% off. A link will be provided in the description. And then also, as always, I am a coach. I do want to advertise my coaching as much as I can. And so in the month of September, I am still looking to pick up a couple more athletes before I cap myself. If you are wanting to learn a little bit more about my programming strategies or my just coaching systems as a whole, you can reach out to me via DM on Instagram. A link will be in the description below. Or if you want to apply for coaching directly, you can use that athlete application link that is also in the description. But with all that being said, I am happy to lead you into episode 30 of the Escalate podcast. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming back. This is now officially episode 30 of the Escalate podcast. Technically more, but I have a bunch of episodes that are archived that will never see the light of day. But cool 3-0 here. And on today's episode, I have one of my very, very good friends, Blake Barrett. It's weird to call him a friend because we don't really act that way towards each other that much. But one of my very good friends, Blake Barrett here. Blake is a 74-kilo lifter in the CPU or Canadian Powerlifting Union. He's been on the world stage. And in today's discussion, we are essentially going to be talking about his journey in powerlifting, how he was able to battle through adversity and get to the world stage with longevity in the sport and falling in love with process powerlifting, as well as how he was able to do that while also going through law school, which is obviously a harrowing feat for most people, barring that they actually are also good at something else like powerlifting that takes a big chunk out of your week. And so I'm going to allow Blake to kind of introduce himself, kind of talk a little bit about how he got started in powerlifting, and specifically kind of what attracted him to the sport. So take it away, Blake.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. As Rob said, Blake, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not an attorney yet because I just took the bar. So a lawyer is you have your JD, which is your degree from law school, but an attorney is when you're admitted to the bar and sworn in. So that might not happen for a while. I currently live in New York and my job's in New York. So I've been here in the States for a long time. And my journey through powerlifting started a long time ago. It started, I would say, before I even ever set foot in a gym. It started when I was really young, in that growing up, I had ADHD, and my parents knew that I couldn't shut up, sit down, couldn't do anything like without medication in my pre-childhood. So as an outlet for that, they put me in sports. So it wasn't anything competitive. I know a lot of other powerlifters, they come from like hyper competitive backgrounds of like, I know for one, like Taylor Atwood, he used to play like in the CFL and like a bunch of other people used to do like track like on a very high competitive level. But for me, I played like Jewish house league hockey until until I was like 13 or 14. I played goalie and I was absolutely dog shit. I was like, I was really bad. I could barely skate still. I was not good. The only sports I was actually good at is that I was good at baseball and I was good at soccer. And so my parents put me in those sports as some side of like a creative outlet because I wasn't good at any of the arts. And so I kind of grew up somewhat with a level of competitiveness, even though it wasn't at such a high level. And I was playing that all throughout my elementary school and early high school. And when I started getting into lifting was as a result of a near-death surgery I had. So in December to January 2011, I was going on a cruise with my family. I think it's funny. I think it was either my mom's or my dad's 50th. So a big celebration that we all wanted to come together for. And I ended up being shipped off the ship in Colombia because I had a bowel obstruction. And I'm not, for people who aren't familiar with the bowel obstruction, is that for what happened to me was a band of tissue grew over the opening of my bowel, which is more so a genetic thing, and essentially blocked me up. So I nearly died of full of shit, basically. Yeah, so my bowel could have ruptured. Yeah, my bowel could have ruptured. It could have gone really bad. So I ended up having surgery in Colombia in January 2012. And because of that surgery, and also being that I was really small and short at the time, I'm still not tall. I'm like barely scratching 5'6". But I was at that time going into grade 9. I was 5'1", maybe, if that. And because of the surgery, I couldn't eat for a week, couldn't drink anything, because anything I would eat would just immediately throw it back up. And I clocked in at almost 75 pounds and 5'1". I was like very emaciated. It was very dangerous. And so it was funny. I remember the tipping point of when I wanted to get into the gym. It was shortly after the surgery, where I think it was me and an old friend and my brother were like in the living room. And my brother, he's shorter than me, but he's my older brother by 2 years. He was like just starting with like jiu-jitsu or some type of wrestling stuff. And he like actually just pinned me in some like playful wrestling sort of way, just showing off his moves. And I just felt at that point helpless. I remember just with his like just my face pressed into the carpet, being like, I can't do anything right now. And I remember at that moment, like, oh, I don't like this feeling of being helpless in my situation. And granted, I pursued lifting at that point. I didn't pursue jiu-jitsu, was because I think most of us, when they feel like weak or they feel helpless in this situation, they choose the gym first and foremost. So that's what I did. I got into the gym. My brother introduced me to powerlifting. He was like, he had like the Inzers, and I think he had like SBD sleeves from like 2012. Like they're really old, and I don't know where they are now. But he introduced me to the gym, and I remember the first time I ever went to the gym, I put the bar on my back, like high bar, just a 45-pound bar, and I started crying because it hurt. And just the neurally hurt my back. I'm like, this sucks. I don't like this. Everything hurts. I just feel like shitty and weak. And I didn't like it. But I kept going because I knew that feeling when my face was pressed against the carpet, like, oh, I don't like that. I have to pursue something and actually affect a change in my life, or I'm going to continue feeling like that. And I just kept going and going. And obviously, like most people, when you like something, you become an absolute nerd about it, and you just like go down rabbit holes like Wikipedia, Google, YouTube, Reddit, bodybuilding.com, like all those things. And my thing was YouTube. So I watched the OG powerlifters. It was like Bart Kwan, Johnny Candido, Omar Isuf. I don't know if people remember Jason Blaha. Like that guy's a freak, but that's neither here nor there. But I remember getting hype watching, there's like, it's still on YouTube today, like the powerlifting mentality, like 101 videos, where it's like Metallica playing in the background. It's videos of like Eric Lillibridge, like bleeding out his face or something. And I thought that was the most hardcore shit ever. Like, oh, these people are like going to war. That's awesome. And when I got into the gym at the time, funny enough, I was watching those videos and I really enjoyed squatting, benching, deadlifting. Like, yeah, girls want to get big arms, whatever, big shoulders, because like I don't want to look good for the girls. But what I really enjoyed doing in the gym was squatting, benching, deadlifting. So after some research, talking with people I'm made friends through like Instagram and social media and all that stuff, I was introduced to the sport and I ended up doing, I remember the date, August 1st, 2014, I made an Instagram post. It's probably still there today, where I announced to the world that, oh, I'm decided to call myself a powerlifter. So it's, if you scroll back far enough on my Instagram, it's still probably there. And so I signed up for my first meet, which was November 14th, 2014. And I loved it. I think it was the coolest thing ever. Couldn't sleep the night before. Did horrible at the meet, placed last, whatever. But I think from then, I just found solace in the pursuit of trying to become better at something, even though I was bad at it initially. And I think that's something we'll get into more later, of my longevity in the sport, of how I was dog shit at something and now I'm one of the best in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you began going to the gym, like you mentioned, much like anybody else. You know, you were, not to, insult you in any way, but you were a small, weak kid, and you were like, I don't want to be a small, weak kid anymore.
I was.
And, now you are the highest dots, the strongest powerlifter in, Canadian powerlifting history.
I don't want to correct you, but I'm like, I think I'm 8.
I thought you were the first one in CP.
No.
Or the best 74, I thought it was.
So I was.
Okay.
I had the national record total.
There we go. Sorry about that.
No, that's guys. I just wanted like people to be like, oh, he's not who he says. I held the national record in the 74s from 2022 to recently, when it was broken a few months ago, I think. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Well,
no, that's good.
Eventually to have the national record total of, being basically the strongest 74 kilo lifter in CPU history. And that journey is obviously one that isn't easy, right? I'm sure that you have faced a lot of adversity, and, being somebody that got into the sport at a very, very young age, 2014, you were what, 14 years old, 13 years old?
15, 16, something like that.
They're 15, 16, so a little bit older. That is kind of the age demographic of what a lot of the newer lifters are now, right? We see these kind of 15 to 18-year-old lifters kind of find their passion for the sport, much like you did. However, I do want to ask, and, obviously this isn't something that we talked about previously, but it's just something that popped into my mind. I do want to ask what you see as a potential difference between what you experienced as a young lifter back in 2014, 2015, and what you are seeing nowadays on social media with young lifters that are in that same age range of 15, 16 years old, getting into the sport, and whether or not you have any specific, maybe not lessons, but whether or not you have anything specifically that you think they could be doing better. I know, we use this term, a flash in the pan, a lot for younger lifters in powerlifting, and how they just kind of show up and then go away very quickly within a couple of years. And you are obviously somebody who has not had that happen. You've been in the sport for 11 years now. And so I wanted to ask if you see any differences between what you experienced personally and potentially what you're seeing online now with a lot of these younger lifters.
I think the answer is actually embedded within the question. It's that it is social media. I think, especially because powerlifting is such a niche thing, it only exists on social media. It doesn't exist on Facebook. You'll have like the odd USAPL Masters 2 Raw, like group chat, but like no one cares about that. But powerlifting as a whole, it only exists specifically on Instagram and maybe Reddit, if that. And I think the ability of, so I think what differentiates me from my early days from lifters nowadays is that people will see something nowadays and compare themselves to it. We all do that. We see someone who's stronger than us, better than us. We compare, like, oh, I want to be lifting X and I'm not lifting X. So what's wrong with me? But I think it's that with Instagram, there's just so much of it. Because when I got into the game, Instagram was fairly new. It was like, 2014, 2015, 2016. Like, not much was going on Instagram at that time. So yeah, you'll have lifters here and there posting their top sets and everything, but it wasn't a huge conglomeration of everyone. Now you have people like Elliot Sykes, who's like barely 18, pushing 800 kilo total, which is insane. And people will just compare themselves too quickly to that, and that will contribute to them falling out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's actually a really, really good point. Being that, obviously with the rise in popularity over the past couple of years of powerlifting, being it's still niche, but, it has absolutely gotten exponentially more popular for, the past 3 years. I didn't realize until you said it, that is inherently the issue. It's a very good thing, but with there being a larger concentration of lifters, you're also going to have a larger amount of people that are on at kind of the upper echelon where people can compare themselves to. And so what it sounds like you're here, or what you're saying, is that for younger lifters, don't allow comparison to be the thief of joy. Run your race, essentially. Be able to progress at the rate that you're progressing. Be happy with that progression and just wait it out, because we'll get into it. I'm about to ask you a question right now about it. You weren't always, like I said, the strongest lifter, right? I mean, up until
to put it like in the real way, I was bad.
Yeah,
Really
I don't want to be mean, but yeah,
I was really
Blake
bad.
was a pretty bad powerlifter.
Pretty bad, yeah.
And so I want to ask, from those years of 2016, where you were about 2 years into the sport, to about where you broke out in like that 2021, 2022 time period, what are some of the things that you've learned that you think other young lifters should be implementing that you haven't already discussed, obviously? And what are some of the things that you are still now using from that kind of time period that continues you to have this kind of longevity?
So I think, I think these lessons, what I'm about to talk about, and these things, but like taking my perspective, can only really be applied to people who are in the age demographic. Because let's say you're someone who's like in their late 20s or even like mid 20s or to 30s, your life situation is completely different. Let's say someone in their like, we hear stories of people who start powerlifting in their like when they're 28 or when they're 30. Where you are in that life is completely different to where you are in like 15, 16. And your ability to, let's say, not to get away with things and to not be as responsible is a lot less, because you may have like a mortgage, you have a family, you may have different things, different responsibilities. So I think the best part of being as a younger lifter is that you can just do it because you enjoy it. I think that's like, I think a lot of people, they look for some like ultra spiritualistic, like meta reason of why they lift at the beginning when they lift. But honestly, like when I lifted, like the time periods you're talking about from like 2014 to like 2020, like before I started like catching my stride, I just liked it. It was a fun thing to do. I wasn't particularly good at it, but I wasn't particularly bad at it. And it was something I was really passionate about because I was able to see that progression from like year to year and block to block and from meet to meet. But I think the question of like people ask like, what's your why? Like that's the whole thing. Like, what's the why? I think that only really starts showing up later in life because I think with becoming more competitive, it gets harder. Like it's pretty easy early on. Like, oh, you're just starting off on like a beer hockey league and you're just on skates. Oh, it's a fun thing to do on a Thursday night or whatever. But let's say you're like working up to like double A, triple A, or like minor league hockey. That shit's serious. That's stuff that requires like a more introspective look into yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it seems essentially like you're saying if you are a younger lifter, if you are in these age ranges of like 15 to 18, envelop yourself in the sport as much as you
Yeah, it's
can.
fun. Yeah.
Find not your why, but
Yeah,
find just passion
yeah.
for the sport. And get involved, do everything that you can do and all of those different things. Now, you have also had your fair share of adversities along the way. I mean, most notably, the infamous groin snappage that I've seen memed on Instagram to eternity at this point. I might pop a video like right here of that instead of watching the actual video thing. Blake loves posting that video. I don't know why. It's funny. It is because it's just he yells obscenities on the platform.
Our friend Brandon, whenever I see him in Miami, I think from across the gym, he'll just scream fuck, 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 because that's why I scream when I obliterate my groin.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like you said, that came during kind of when you were getting your stride in the sport. I mean, you were just kind of catching your stride, becoming competitive, and you obviously faced this, large adversity of having to overcome a groin tear, like a straight up tear of musculature in the groin, where most people just, get a small strain, like their pec hurts a little bit, or they've got a small, amount of lower back pain or discomfort. You had like an actual injury. And this is a tangent that maybe I'll go on right now, but I think people need to understand the difference between discomfort and injury. Discomfort is something that can be managed. Injury is something that legitimately takes you out of the sport. You had an injury. You had something that legitimately took you out of the sport. You can compete with discomfort. You can't compete with an injury.
I think I didn't end up getting MRI after it because when I talked with my coach, like the road to recovery is the exact same, whether we know if it was an actual rupture or not.
Yeah.
So, but I think there was no like blue, like other things. So it wasn't a rupture, but I think on the scale, it's like a 1 to 4. It was like a 3B, which is like 4 is here, like a rupture. I was right here.
Yeah,
I have a hole still. I have a hole in my groin to this day because of it. Like there's an indentation in my adductor.
Yeah, absolutely. And to get back on topic, I apologize.
Yeah.
But to get back on topic after my little rant there, like I said, that's something that happened in the middle of you catching your stride, and it can take the wind out of your sails. It absolutely can. And I want to ask, what are some of the things that you were able to use during that time? Because I think a lot of, people in the sport, there's the infamous graphic of or table of hours in a sport, injuries per 1,000 hours in a sport. And I think I did the math. And if you do 4 times a week, just training frequency, so you're in the gym 4 times a week, most people train 2 hours a day. It's about, roughly 8 hours a week. It comes out to like 3 or 4 years, 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 to 4 years, somewhere in there, that you hit that 1,000 hour mark. And powerlifting has it as somewhere around like 1.5 to 2 injuries during that time. And so if you've been in the sport of powerlifting for 2 to 4 years, you've probably experienced something like that. But for those younger lifters where they, they're in their first year, they're in their second year of the sport and they haven't had that happen, what are some of the things that you were able to use in that specific time frame to mentally be able to still show up? I know a lot of it is just being a good athlete and having an understanding of what it means to show up. And maybe you can explain that as well. But also kind of the lessons you've learned from that, that you are still kind of implementing to this day when you do face any sort of adversity in training.
Yeah, so just thinking back at the time, just to reiterate, just to give some context of where I was at the time, I first broke the national record total in 2022 at Worlds. So I beat it. And so going into what it was 2023 Nats, which I was fighting for my spot for 2023 Worlds. So during that time, yeah, as you said, I was just hitting my stride. I held the natural record total. And for the first time ever, this is what, almost a decade in the sport, I felt like I was the one to beat. That was like my first time ever feeling like not just in powerlifting, and first time in anything. I wasn't like an academically strong student. I wasn't like a crazy thing that I was good in anything. This is like the only thing I ever started really getting good at. But yeah, so going into that meet, I felt immense pressure, and it ended up happening. I tore my groin, and so I think the two different mindsets. They're the same principle, but I think they have to be applied differently to injuries and to training. Because I think with training, the principle I'm going to talk about is that you have to take solace in the little wins. But I think it's a lot easier to do in training, because when we see like blocks of training, they're usually around like anywhere from 4, 6, 8, 12 to whatever it may be weeks. And so taking those like little wins over blocks of training is something you could actually put like what's it called, like what's the word, perspective to. But I think when you get an injury, whether it be catastrophic or even a smaller injury, being able to really grasp and cherish the small wins. Like, for example, these are just words, but for example, remember when I tore my groin, we had the whole like progression thing. And one of my mainstays in my program was Copenhagen's. And I was timed Copenhagen's off a bench. And I remember, I'm sorry, I have to like go back. Sorry, there's like two different things, because this is actually, this isn't my first groin tear, because I tore my groin once again in 2020, which is more of a sports hernia kind of injury, and then 2023. So I've actually torn both groins weight to put. And so what I'm saying, more really applied to the first injury, was taking the small victories. So as I was saying, like the timed Copenhagen's, I would slowly progress from like the moment arm. I would slowly get the moment arm on the chair or the bench longer and longer, and I'm able to do it for more and more time. I remember I made a post, or I texted my coach being like, hey, this time I can cry. I'm so happy. I did a Copenhagen for 25 seconds, which is up from 13 seconds from 3 weeks ago. So it's taking like those little small things and really compounding them over time. And once you keep doing that from week to week, block to block, over the time of the year, like you'll look back and like, oh, what the hell? I can do a Copenhagen for a MIG and I'm back to squatting. Like everything's fine and dandy now. But I think if you're injured, it's okay to catastrophize, but it's not okay to, in the middle of catastrophizing, to stop doing what you can. Like, it's okay. You might think shit's over. Your powerlifting career is over. But what you have to do is just do your best and try. And until you try, I saw a quote the other day. It was like, no one ever regretted trying their best. That's all you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, speaking of the catastrophization, Jesus, big word there. Speaking to that point, there's something that I always tell a lot of my lifters, and it's actually something I got from Sean. You know, Sean is who coaches you. Sean coached me for 4 years.
He's been coaching me since 2017. So I think I'm one of his longest athletes still.
That's crazy. So, you know, right about 8 years now, you doubled, you basically, you know, just shat in my face and doubled my tenure with Sean. But one of the things that Sean told me while I was going through something very similar, it's no, you know, surprise to anybody that knows me. I've had my fair share of lower back issues, hip issues. It's kind of the two things that impede my training progress most often. is just, stress to the lower back and the hip. And I was having a really bad training session, and I was, texting him manically as a neurotic client does. As coaches, we fucking love that. I'm being completely sarcastic. Don't do it at all. And he basically told me, he's like, all right, dude, I'm going to give you 24 hours. So I'm going to give you 24 hours to be basically a little baby, cry about it, and catastrophize and feel really bad. But after 24 hours, I want you to look back and tell me whether or not that was productive. And tell me whether or not you still feel that way. And 9 times out of 10, it's okay to catastrophize, like you said, but you need to give yourself a deadline. You need to give yourself some sort of time limit on doing so. Because if you don't, you're going to continue that mentality. And as somebody who studies, basically the psychology and physiology of learning a movement, I've also dove into the research of the psychology of learning behaviors. And the more that you're exposed to a specific behavior, the more you're going to be attuned to that specific behavior. So if you continually catastrophize a specific injury or feeling, the more you're going to just inherently feel that way. So give yourself 24 hours to be a baby. Give yourself 24 hours to bitch and moan and complain about what the issue is. But after that, look back and understand, was it productive? If it was and it got that feeling out of your system, cool. If it wasn't, understand why and make those changes. Those would be my biggest things there. I don't know if you have anything to add, but that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. But I think just pivoting off of that, people like to talk about what are the lessons you've learned, or like what's your takeaway, or how has this shaped you? I think the first injury helped lay the foundation of my resilience. And I think that's the overarching theme of my powerlifting career, is just simply resilience. I think I wrote my paper and my entrance paper into law school on my resilience. And it's something I have talked about in job interviews. I don't know how many job interviews I brought up my groin tear. So that's always a fun conversation. But I think with the first injury, it laid the foundation for my resilience. But the second one really cemented it, because I think people will get injured and be like, oh, this sucks. Like, oh, okay, what do we do from now? And then they have the game plan. With that, when they get injured again, that's almost like, even if it was 3 years later, it's like, oh, this shit again. That makes people want to hang it up. But I think the difference in mindset I came to the second injury was also get off this shit again, start from zero, which sucks because I was really hitting my stride. It was more so, oh, I've done this already. It felt easier the second time, because I saw the evidence of the small progressions. I knew what I had to do. And so when I tore my groin, I was back in the gym, 3 days later, doing weighted step-ups for 10 minutes and then going home. That's all I could do because I could barely walk. And then it just over time, just stacking those wins and just cementing the characteristics of resilience that I've taken throughout all my life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I tell my lifters a lot, and it's obviously something that you've practiced with those, resilient times that you've had over the past couple of years. But whenever I have a lifter or anybody talk to me about injury in the sport of powerlifting, the thing that I tell them most is that you have to take whatever you can do as seriously as you took the training that got you there. If you were training really, really hard into a meet, and, maybe you pushed the envelope of what you could handle on a workload scale, and, you ended up, snapping your lower back, or you ended up, snapping up your pec or shoulder or anything like that. Going into the gym the next week, you need to bring that same level of effort and intent to whatever you can do. Give it the same amount of time. If you can't train as long, give it the same amount of time to the recovery side of things, of sleeping well and eating well and just moving around in the world, getting your steps in, all of those different things that we, hear about all the time, but you need to be giving it that same level of effort and intent. But to kind of flip the subject a little bit, Not only did you snap your groin while at Nats, which is a terrible thing to do, like you said,
Very embarrassing.
yeah, the very first time you were like, oh, I'm really good at something. It's like God's looking down and saying, nah, brother, nah, you are not. But you prepped for Nats, Worlds, competed at Nats, competed at Worlds, through also going through a what I assume to be a very hard time in your life, being in law school and applying for law school, studying for the bar, all of those different things. Now, being that we're now shifting the kind of conversation towards stresses in a mental sense rather than a physical sense, I wanted to give you maybe a little bit of time to explain kind of I don't want to continue to say lessons that you've learned, because I feel like I've asked you that 7 times now. But just kind of the foundational things that you've been able to accomplish from maybe a systems perspective in being consistent in your training, your nutrition, in your recovery, and how you were able to implement that in, this kind of like very mentally stressful time, and how that now has transferred into what you're able to do now, as an actual lawyer, not attorney yet, though, right?
Yeah. So people, as I said before, I'm a lawyer, just graduated law school, and I just finished the bar, took it a month ago. And so people aren't familiar with the bar. I'm sure anyone who knows a lawyer in their life and you ask them about the bar, it's the hardest thing. They'll say it's the hardest thing they'll ever do in their life, and they're right. It is anywhere from a 10 to 12 week gauntlet of studying. It depends on when you start studying. It is anywhere from 5 to 9 hours a day of studying, 7 days a week, every single day. Maybe you'll get a day off, like the program you're studying will give you a day off, like every 10 days or whatever, and that's all you get. But it's absolute hell. And it's, so that only came at the end of my law school journey. But through powerlifting, it's been giving me, I think it all really just ties back to, like you asked about the systems that have been installed in me. It's become through my resilience. It's that, like, for example, the Copenhagen thing is, you see the progression. You're over here and you want to be over here, but you have to go through all the way over here to get here. And it's the same thing with like studying, like throughout law school. Like when it comes to exam time, you sit down, let's say a month before your finals, and you have to make an outline for your con law class or your contracts class or whatever it may be. And you're staring at a blank piece of paper with your class notes and whatever, and you got to start somewhere. And it's getting that kicked off and started, which is honestly the hardest thing to do. It's the same thing with writing like a brief.
Oh no. I think I lost you.
Hey, from people in, oh, did you cut out?
Yeah, I cut out for like like 5 to 10 seconds. Sorry.
Okay, so that's okay. Where should I pick up?
I just heard you talk about the brief.
Okay.
Writing a brief.
Okay, so yeah, going back to say writing a brief, it's saying starting to write a brief is always the hardest thing. Same thing with getting back from an injury. It's always the hardest thing, just to get your feet back in the gym and have a plan. But it's envisioning the end progress that you have to always keep in mind. And for some people, that end progress might be a world champion. Some people, my end progress might be, oh, I'm looking forward to hitting some quality reps at the end of a block. But for me, when I was studying throughout law school, I knew I needed a certain amount of studying to be done. I knew I needed to put in those hours while also balancing the gym. And so making time, like when it comes to exam time, I would make the decisions throughout the week to ensure I had time not only for studying, but also for the gym. So what most people do, like let's say for law school, usually you'll have classes from like Monday to Thursday, and everyone goes out on Thursday. But for me, and you'll have like an irresponsible amount of reading due for the next week. Like I'm talking, let's say for in 1 hour, like constitutional law, you were reading 150 pages a week, and that's just one class. And then you'll have 50 pages of another class, and then 40 pages of another class, and then 30 pages of another class. Like you look at your schedule in the beginning of the week and be like, oh, thank God, I only have 35 pages to read and only 7 cases to like look up and like understand. So that's like a pleasure. So what I would do is I would do all my reading on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I would, I think, sit down and I would study several hours a day, just do the reading, just so I would have time on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to be able to go to the gym. So, because most people, they would be reading in the week during the week, and I would be in the gym while they were reading. And so I think that's especially what powerlifting has instilled in me. It's being able to stay so regimented, and that I have to accomplish something. I have a time limit to accomplish something, like whether it be a 2-hour training session or an 8-week studying period. It's that like regimenting yourself in time to be able to accomplish those things.
Very cool. I actually really like that. You know, I'm obviously extremely regimented as well. Again, anybody that knows me, my Google Calendar looks like a kid that just like threw paint on the wall because there's just colors everywhere for different meetings and tasks that I need to get done and all of those different things. And, you know, I've talked about, you know, I just posted about it yesterday actually, but I've talked about this guy right here, which is my to-do list that literally goes with me everywhere I go. Go check out that video if you want to hear about that. I won't bore you here. But, you know, I agree with you. I think that powerlifting, I'm extremely grateful for powerlifting in that same sense, in the sense that I have been able to now have an experience, albeit with physical activity, to understand and know what real consistency looks like, and understand that real consistency sometimes breeds fruitful opportunities, and sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes you can do everything that you are supposed to do and still not come back with the outcome that you thought was going to happen. You could do everything that you need to do towards the end of a block and still fail your top set. You could, you know, study as much as you want during a test and still, you know, maybe not get the grade that you wanted. But it's not being so tied to the outcomes, it's being tied to the process. And as soon as individuals learn to be tied to the process, both in an academic sense and a work sense, and in a physical sense, everything else just becomes so much easier, right? Like it just becomes a little bit of common sense to just show up. It seems like that's kind of what you're getting at here.
Yeah, I think it relates to something like a quote I said earlier in the podcast about no one ever regretted trying their best.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something my girlfriend jokes about with me all the time. It's that I either know how to try 100% or I know how to try 0%. There's honestly there's no in between for me. And so I think with studying, I think that's what powerlifting has given me, is that I'm not going to go into a session. Yeah, I think people like to say, oh, every single session, I'm trying 100%. And that, I don't think that's true. You can't always give 100%, but what you can do is always act with the intent of giving 100%. Is that being purposeful, trying your best. And like you said, just because you try your best doesn't always mean like you're going to get the outcomes you want. But as long as you can look in the mirror and say, oh, I actually tried my best, then you're happy. I think it relates. I think early in the semester of my second semester of 3L, of third-year law school, I wrote a complaint which is like the beginning of the legal process. I'm not gonna like bore you with all that stuff. I wrote a legal thing for class, and I got it back, and I got a B on it, which is really not good for me because I was like a B plus, A- student. And I look at it, and at first I see, oh, I got a B. What the hell? Why did the professor give me a B? And I go to the professor, or I email him, or whatever it was. I'm like, oh, can you explain why I got a B and what I did wrong? And he sent me this long email of just being like, here's what you did wrong. Here's where you fucked up. Here's what you can do better. Instead of being like, oh, what a dick. Like, I should have gotten a better grade. He's like, yeah, I was lazy. I should have been more attentive. And luckily enough, we had a rewrite for that paper and I got an A. So that's how it goes. As long as you actually try your best. The reason why I was so mad is because I remember writing it and I didn't try my best. I've tried my best on so many things in law school, on papers, on assignments, group projects, and all that stuff, and still ended up with a B. But I don't regret it because the grade is not material to me. It's the effort I put into it. So regardless, like, yeah, sure, I'll like an A every single time. But I don't think back and be like, oh, I'm a fuck up because I got a B. I would only think back, oh, I'm a fuck up because I didn't try my best.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a beautiful place to end this. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast, brother.
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to plug anything if you want, Instagram, anything else that you're doing during this time now. So go ahead.
I only have Instagram. It's at Powerlifting Barrett, and that's it.
There we go. If you want to get barraged with Instagram stories.
Don't ask me for coaching. I don't know anything about coaching.
Finally.
Please. I don't know anything.
Finally, top-level athlete that doesn't...
I don't know anything.
I'm kidding.
I don't know what periodization means. I don't know what tapering means. I've been doing what I've been told for 10 years, and I'm happy with it.
There we go. If you do what you're told for 10 years, you may be on the world stage also.
Exactly.
Thank you, Blake. I appreciate you coming on, man. And if you guys have listened this far, I greatly appreciate it as well. It would be an absolute delight if you could rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything that you're listening on. Subscribe to the YouTube if you're listening on YouTube. Follow on Spotify. All of those things do wonders for getting this into more ears. And, you know, I think that Blake has said a lot of things today that need to be heard, you know, around the community. So the more that we can do that, the better it is. So thank you for listening. And as always, continue climbing.